Thanks for tuning in to the Mission Matters podcast, where we feature successful, mission-driven leaders committed to creating a positive change in the world. Our mission with this channel is to inspire other leaders by providing industry insights, new ideas, and inspiring stories from the pros.
Hi, Paul Fife here, host of the show where I interview business leaders heading up mission-focused organizations in the nonprofit space, leading from the heart and making a difference in their communities. Today's episode is sponsored by our very own Paul Gregory Media, actually known as PGM, a long-established digital marketing agency devoted to the nonprofits and their missions. We're also one of a few certified B Corps in the world, actually. Only a few thousand of them in the world right now that put people and the planet over profit. To learn more about the services PGM offers, visit their website, paulgregorymedia.com. So with me today, I'm very excited, Ashley Kratschmer, PGM's own digital marketing coordinator. She manages everything in the digital marketing space, delivering countless impressions and leads and awareness to her client organizations. In this episode, we're going to talk about something that not a lot of people know about. And if they do, maybe they're not executing it as well as they could. So I'm very excited. It's programmatic. It's automatic. It's a newfangled word and a newfangled service. It's been around for a couple of years. So thanks for being with me here, Ashley.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Before we get started and deep dive into programmatic, why don't you just give us a little background about yourself?
Yeah. So as you said, my name is Ashley, and I've been with Paul Gregory Media almost for 2 years. We're coming up on a 2-year anniversary, so that's exciting.
Woohoo!
I know, right? It's fun. And I've been a digital marketing coordinator since my time here. And that kind of looks like from my day-to-day, it's very similar to like a management role. I'm keeping track of a lot of different projects. Because of the size of our team, we're able to kind of be a part of a bunch of different projects in a bunch of different ways. And so I tend to lean more on the technical side. So I'm doing things that are more behind the scenes. So making updates to websites, doing some back-end work with that, managing plugins. A lot of our clients use a donation plugin for their website. So I'm usually the one installing, configuring that. And then, I do programmatic advertising, usually anything that's kind of within the realm of digital advertising, usually falls on my plate. So Google Ads, have also done that before using just the regular platform, and then also the grant, which one day we can maybe talk about. But I also do programmatic advertising, and that's been really fun. I've been doing that for 2 years, so I've got experience with that.
Yeah, it's funny that you say you do things more with a technical bent. I mean, digital marketing is really technology, right? Mm-hmm. It's using all the platforms, all the apps, and coordinating, right? So coordinating is configuring, targeting, anything from SEO to ads, like the programmatic ad management and on. So yeah, I think you almost have to be sort of in the technology space, to be successful at that job. So tell us, what is programmatic? What the heck does that mean?
Yeah, it's a very, very fun, very technical sounding thing. But basically, in its pure essence, programmatic advertising is another form of digital media buying, but it's in a process that is completely automated by technology. So what I mean by that, for example, people see them all the time. If you go on things like weather.com, or you go on like some of your favorite shopping networks, or different like news networks, you'll see like banner ads displayed all over your screen, or you'll see maybe some ads showing up in social media when you're scrolling through Facebook and you see an ad that looks a lot like the content that your friends are sharing, but it's actually an ad. All of that put together falls within the programmatic advertising branch. So it's a process of digital media buying by way of automated technology. Wow.
Yeah.
First podcast. Can't you tell? No. So there's a lot of different like networks that you can be placed on. So we mentioned, websites. So those display ads on the front ends of websites. Your ads can show up on your tablets, on social media. It can show up on any like streaming audio. They have like radio ads that you can do, and then connected TV. So Hulu, Roku, Tubi, all those different kinds
So
of
lots of different platforms. Well, who manages all? Like, how do you determine which platforms it goes on, or what governs all that?
That is a great
It sounds
question.
like there's thousands of them.
There's definitely a lot that are out there. So I use a demand side platform, which is basically like a control center is the best way I can describe it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's basically where you can manage all of your ad campaigns. A lot of different platforms have something like this. Like, I mean, Facebook ads, it's very similar to like the Facebook ads dashboard, Meta, whatever
Okay.
going by today. But this place or this platform that we use is really helpful because it kind of is the control center for all of those different areas. So you can just go on one platform and manage all the different areas that your ads are being distributed. So it's very nice. We use StackAdapt, which we really like because of their targeting parameters, all the ease of being able to look at your reporting. And just in general, it's just really easy to manage because programmatic is not easy. And like it takes a lot of time to learn. And there's a lot of different aspects and facets of it. And so we just really
so there's
like
a
that.
learning curve then.
Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot to manage. There's a lot to be, checking in on. And it's not just whenever you're, starting a campaign, like after the campaign launches, then finding out like, okay, how do I make it better? Now that the data is rolling in, like, oh, how can I make my CTRs go up? Or how can I help make sure that these ads are being shown to the people that are most likely to click, things like that. There's always something you can be doing to optimize your campaign. And so there's definitely a learning curve, but I really like that platform because it makes it easy to kind of sort through all that information in order to better set up and optimize your campaign.
Well, that's important because whenever you're trying to optimize a campaign for a client, you want to make sure you have that support of the app to have that granular control, I guess, right?
Oh, absolutely. And especially, and it's good to know too, because like clients, they'll have really good questions. And so sometimes it's hard to kind of pinpoint exactly where to fix certain issues whenever you're dealing with a whole plethora of different switches and knobs that you can be working with to make your campaign better. And so that's really helpful too for us as the people that are managing the campaign to be able to navigate that whole area easily in order to best help our clients and communicate what's going on with the money that they're spending, because it's not cheap. I'll be honest in that, it's not like the cheapest.
Well, cheap is relative, right? And expensive is relative.
Yeah. And like, it's not free. I'll say, so it's not free. You gotta pay to play. It's one of those kind of platforms, but it's definitely worth it because of the vast expansion of different networks your ads can go on. And because to really make a dent from what we've been seeing, you really don't need too much of a high ad spend budget in order to perform well and really get these ads in front of people who matter. That's the big thing, honestly, like the audience parameters and the targeting options you have with programmatic are so good. Like, I think one of the other ones that I just know besides before programmatic, I was always like, yeah, I've heard LinkedIn, like, for example, they've got like really good, like audience targeting, but they're so expensive to do those ads. And programmatic, it's amazing, like how specific you can and how granular you can get with the people who you want to see your ads.
And that's a great advantage that people should know about. And anybody who knows me knows I'm never afraid to talk about money. We're not talking about a few $100s. Like you can get away with a few $100s a month with Google ads. Right. But with programmatic, we're really talking about 1,000 and up, right? And a typical ad spend might be around 2,000 is what we typically see in a given month. And then there's a management fee on top of that agencies typically charge about 20%. So
yeah. And
just to yeah,
it's mostly just because, like, obviously, if you're going to spend money towards anything, you want it to get the results you want, right? So usually 2,000 is that good, like, golden number that we usually see, to where if people want like a certain CTR that they're going for, or a certain impression count, or if there's certain conversions that they're wanting to get, usually 2,000 we see is pretty successful. Obviously, it just depends, right? I'm not going to say that if you just spend
right. So it's a sliding scale, right? If
yeah.
they have 2,000, we can at least tell them how many impressions they're going to get and how many leads they're going to get or clicks they're going to get to their landing page. And they might come back and say, well, we'd like to double that. Okay, well, then if you double your money, we can double those clicks. We could double those number of people that see that ad. And it's also important to note, right, that these are display ads.
Mm-hmm. Some of them can be, but you can do a bunch of different types of ads. So display ads are those ads that you see like on the side or on the top or sometimes in the middle of like a website. So I always like to use weather.com, for example. They've always got like a bunch of different like almost like little ad placements, like what you'd see in a magazine on the sides and up at the top around the page that you're on. But that's not the only type you can do. You can also do video ads through programmatic advertising. You can do specific ones that can be shown on CTV. So you can make ads for Hulu, for YouTube. I think I'd said earlier too, you can even do like audio. So if you wanted to use programmatic and target certain podcasts or like certain people that listen to certain podcasts and have your audio ad go in between, you could do that. And so there's a lot of different types of ads you can have. Display is the one that, at least for nonprofits, we usually see the biggest return with impressions. That one gets the most impressions because you're putting something right in front of someone and it's a little bit easier to get those ads in front of people. So usually,
and I suppose you could cheat a little bit too by making them animated in a way if you wanted to, right? Like a GIF.
Yeah, you could definitely make a GIF. One of our clients that we work with, DuPage Children's Museum, we work with Julie and Jamie, love them. And we have for the past couple of years been doing programmatic advertising with them. And recently, I want to say in the past 6 months, the campaigns that we are running are animated GIFs. So it's just kind of like almost like two static images next to each other. There's like a twinkle or, something very small to give it movement. But you can do those types of creatives as well.
And those types of, that little bit of animation, right? And understated as it may be, is enough to increase the impression count, enough to increase the click-through rate.
It really is. Yeah, which is amazing how, and that's the other fun part about programmatic advertising is that your detailed reporting, it goes very much in depth. Like people always say like, oh, here's your report for, whatever, but you can get really granular into seeing how many impressions and clicks different networks are giving you. You can see by location, like zip code, seeing like which zip code is giving you the most bang for your buck. You can see which ads are performing the best. Yeah, it's really.
I suppose that goes into optimization too. You can, if there's a zip code that's not really performing really well, can you drop it?
Oh yeah, yeah. If there's anything like after your campaign launches that it's just not that it's not working, but maybe it's just not working well, or at the end of the day, whenever you're talking, so let's pretend we're talking display ads. If I've got like 15 zip codes, and there are 3 zip codes that are expensive. So if it costs a lot of money to show ads to people in that zip code, and then I also see that there's really not many clicks. We've been doing this campaign for a month, let's say, and these 3 zip codes cost a good amount of money from our media budget, but we haven't gotten any clicks. That would be a good indicator that maybe those zip codes just aren't worth the money, because if you're going to put money towards something, put it towards zip codes that are showing that they're actually going to click your website. They're actually going to convert in a sense and go to the page that you're wanting them to go to. There's no point in spending money on zip codes, especially after a month. I'd say even probably 2 weeks, you could probably start filtering things out. But yeah, so things like that. So if there's like an ad that's not performing well, or if it's a location or a zip code, or one thing we see too is that you can even filter down based on the display. So if you're seeing that a lot of your impressions are not coming from, I think one of them is like apps. So you can like filter down, like how much do you really want apps to use your ads? Because who knows, maybe like an app, it's usually games. Sometimes people aren't as
receptive. Probably.
Yeah. Like when I'm playing like Candy Crush, I don't want to like stop Candy Crush to check out XYZ. And so most people, those CTRs can be affected by that. And so if you wanted to, you could filter out like how many times, how frequently you want your ad to be seen in the middle of a gaming app, and maybe put that money towards desktop or towards mobile or things like that. So you can always optimize during the campaign. If you're seeing things aren't working too great. And again, that's why it's really good to have a nice platform where you can visualize everything and find all the different areas that you can optimize, so that you can make those changes seamlessly without being overwhelmed by everything that is shown. And the nice thing with us is that we do it for you.
I could be overwhelmed just listening to.
I know.
All these changes, you're really also, what I'm hearing is you're also being a very good financial steward of the client's advertising dollars, right? Because if it's not really utilized well in one area, you can shift those dollars to an area that's really performing well, especially if it's performing well with higher converting clicks and leads, right?
Yeah, definitely. Like, for example, with our display ads, usually we do 2 types of ad groups. So it kind of goes like, there's like a hierarchy and a structure, which that could be like a whole nother that we could get into. Right. But basically, we take your ad spend. So let's say you have $2,000 to spend a month. I'll take about 80% of that. So it's around like $1,700. And I'll put that towards a certain ad group that are specifically about just getting ads in front of people. That $300, though, I'll split and I'll put it specifically with a group that is in retargeting. So retargeting meaning in the past 30, 60, 90 days, whatever parameter you want, we can do with that. Let's say within the past 30 days, these are people that have already interacted with our website. So maybe they saw an ad before and they clicked and they didn't really feel like it was that time to convert. We can specifically put money towards this subsection of people that have already interacted with your website. And usually you get probably lower amounts of impressions because, the whole world versus people that have visited in the past. Narrow, but your CTRs are going to be really nice there. And then it's kind of the flip side with the other one. You want more of your ad spend to go to people who haven't seen your ads before, especially if you're talking about awareness campaigns. You want it to be seen by people who don't know about you. But there might be certain factors where you're kind of whittling down the people that actually want to click, that actually want to convert. So sometimes your clicks can be lower, but your impressions are higher. And then with retargeting people, usually it's flipped. So it's a lot of strategy. It's a lot of management. For technical bend people like myself and you, it's more fun to talk about and get into details.
I think we might have to unpack just a little bit there. So, and I had 2 questions in my mind. I'm sure I'm going to lose them, but if I were to draw an analogy to help people out with this, Facebook, if you try to grow your audience and you want to boost a post, let's say, if you don't boost the post, it's just organic. You're preaching to the same choir, right? They're already ambassadors of your brand. They're already following you. They're the ones that are going to see it. How do you expand beyond that? So that's why you're putting more of that money into that first bucket. That's $1,700, so that you're developing a new audience. So that's one. 2 is I think we need to unpack retargeting just a bit.
Yeah, sure.
Because retargeting is targeting people that have already seen or been or done some sort of action. So in your case, in your example, you're saying people who have visited my website are now going to see my ad, and they're going to see that ad. It could be on their mobile device. It could be the next time they check out the weather on their computer, on their laptop, or on their phone, or whatever. So, right. So that depends on how we targeted those ads. So that's one form of retargeting. Yeah. There's other forms of retargeting too, right? So like geofencing.
Yeah, you can do geofencing. So geofencing, the difference between that and retargeting is basically digital. So people who have visited your organization online, that'd be retargeting, right? Geofencing is the opposite. So that's anyone that actually visits the physical place. You can target on that regard. And then you can also do things like lookalike audiences. I know that Facebook and I think Google has something similar, where you can like create lookalike audiences. So for nonprofits, what we would probably say is anyone who's on your email list, you could retarget those kind of groups as well.
And then it creates another audience list based on the likes and hobbies and demographics of that current list, I would imagine.
Exactly. So it's basically like you're creating a younger sibling of your current audience.
Cloning one, yeah.
Yeah, you're cloning a twin or something like that, but they're still different. It's a fraternal twin. So
okay.
Yeah.
And then just to get a little technical for a moment, back to the retargeting for people visiting a website. They visit the website and then someplace on, and we've all seen this, right? If you look for shoes on Amazon, next thing you know, you're getting a shoe ad on your Facebook feed.
Yes.
Or on the Weather Channel. So let's give the audience a taste of how that works. And it comes down right to a single pixel. So explain a little bit how that works.
Yeah. So a pixel is a piece of code that is generated by your demand side platform. So whenever I want to create that piece of code, I will go onto the account for our client. I'll create very basic retargeting segments, things like the landing pages that I want it to collect, the expiry time, which is that time frame, again, the 30, 60, or 90 days, where how long of that time frame do you want? Do you want to be catching people that have interacted in only the past 30 days or only the past 60 days? It kind of just depends on what you want. And then what the platform does is it will generate this piece of code. Kind of looks like a Google Analytics code. A lot of those like tracking codes that are like, put this on the back end of your website. The same kind of thing. The platform creates it for you. All you have to do is answer a couple questions and it creates it for you. And then once you have that code, you'll go on the back end of your website and put it in your universal header section. So for example, if we're talking WordPress, you'll log into WordPress and usually there's like, I know for Divi, there's a whole section. If you're using like a Divi web builder, usually a lot of web builders, they have a space for you to put that.
Or in WordPress, you could just put it in the universal page header.
Exactly. It's really simple to put in. We do that for you if you're interested, but it's also very simple to put in. You just paste it into your header code, and then you got to give it like a couple weeks just to start generating and doing all that back end work for you. But once you put that in there, that's the only thing you have to do in terms of the campaign. Like you don't actually need to put in all this demographic and interests and third party targeting segments. You just have to put that you're using the retargeting pixel. And it's like, okay, then that's who we will target.
Magic sauce. It just works.
Yeah. You have to put in like your location stuff. So you still have to put like, this amount of zip codes. You still have to do that. But everything else, you don't have to be granular. You just say, I'm going to do the retargeting pixel, and that's it. So it's pretty simple. And a lot of people, sometimes they just want to do a retargeting. Sometimes they don't really want to do data prospecting, or I could see like with specific conversions or really specific type of campaign. Sometimes all you want to do is one retargeting campaign, and you can do that. So the strategy and what kind of campaign you do, what that looks like, it's all customized to what makes sense for you. So it's really nice
with a little guidance from you, I'm sure, right?
There's some guidance from your local PG, but the sky's the limit, honestly. Like actual technical barriers where it's like that's not possible for anyone to do. But other than those things, like if there's a certain way you want to go about targeting people, there's usually always an answer for that. It's just knowing how to go about it and how to set it up correctly. And
what those limits and parameters are for sure. This kind of, you put this in perspective, programmatic, and to get on these different networks and platforms, right? Takes AI basically to do the ad buying for you by the minute and bid on these spots in these ad inventories, which are numbers in the tens of thousands. Right. So if you wrap your mind around it, the only way this can be done and bid on in real time by the minute is through AI. And that's why it's a relatively new technology. It's only been out for like the last 5 years and really, I would say, utilized by agencies the last 3 years. And the prices have come down. Right. So the demand side platforms are not as expensive as they once were. They used to be tens of thousands of dollars. And now they're tens of dollars, if not some cases. They have pretty long trials as well. What I love about all this Ashley, is that we used to visit the digital world, right? And now we kind of live in it. And I think maybe the pandemic has sort of helped that along, but we live in it. So it's very easy to not only target anybody, right? If they're in the digital space, we know who they are. We may not know them, but we know of them, and they're going to fit a certain profile. But also, I don't even know where I was going with that, to tell you the truth. I guess my fascination is that we can target anybody because everybody lives in the digital space. They're spending hours on their phone, hours on their laptop every day. And there's so much information about them from tens of thousands of different databases that get coagulated and cross-referenced. And that's how we know a lot of this information. It's kind of like the old fashioned, oh my gosh, I got this magazine. How did I get it? How did I get on this list? Well, because some other magazine probably sold your list, right?
Right. Yeah.
It's kind of like what's going on now in a digital space. And there's some legislation going on right now to protect people and to keep their private lives private. And that's also a good thing, not necessarily for advertisers, but certainly good for people. And I think I'll plug that because as a B Corp, we always want to put people over profit.
Just a quick,
right, sure. Just a little thing.
Right. Well, and that's to say too, like, because I think a lot of people sometimes they get kind of scared of digital advertising, like Programmatic does, because they don't want to come off a certain way, because they don't want it to seem like, they're spamming you or they're just sending you a bunch of information or all this kind of stuff, which I understand. But one, there are ad blockers out there. So if people really don't want ads, they don't have to have them. And two, part of the beauty of programmatic is that the ads, in order to perform well, there still needs to be like space being bought. And for people to be clicking, they still need to be like good ads. And so the nice thing with that is that your targeting parameters can be so nice and specific. And so long as you go in there and you set it up the way that you want, your ads are probably not going to go to a bunch of people that would look at those and rather think, oh, why am I getting this? This is so frustrating, and put a negative viewpoint of your organization in their minds, because that's what everyone's scared about. They don't want to be associated with anything negative. But if you're targeting correctly, that's probably not going to happen, because the people you're targeting are going to have some sort of interest in seeing that ad, or they're not going to be mad whenever they see it. It's like, oh no, a children's museum ARG. Like, no, they're probably going to be people that for some reason or another would be interested in learning more. And so
they're going to be families, right? They're going to have kids of that museum age. They're going to be making a certain income. They're going to have hobbies and interests that revolve around those kinds of things too. Yeah, there's a lot of ways that could certainly be targeted.
And that's why like having a strategic like partner to help you manage it, especially if you're new, because what you don't want is to get people that are all about just straight numbers. Like, I want a bunch of impressions, so I'm going to blast an ad out and 50% aren't going to interact with it. You're going to waste money. And then again, you're going to have that whole persona of, why am I getting this? Like, I have no interest in it. It's probably because the person managing it isn't being granular enough. You can be too granular to where you just aren't going to get enough people, but you can also be too broad to where people that would not have any interest, and it's okay. Like, not everyone's cup of tea is for someone else, but like, that's the way that you really make sure that you're avoiding any of that like negative association with ads.
Right.
Is that you're actually
That's a good point. Have the targeting agree with the service or product that you're offering.
Yeah. And with the people that you're showing it to. And that's why it's important to make sure the people managing the campaign, if it isn't you, if you go through a different agency or an outside partner, make sure that they know about that. And make sure they know how to get you really good strategic targeting for your campaign, so you don't have to worry about that.
Well, that's paramount. I mean, otherwise you're just throwing spaghetti on the wall, I think, is
right.
Seeing what sticks.
Right.
Now, programmatic advertising isn't for every situation. When is a good time to use programmatic ads versus, say, Google ads?
That is a good question. So programmatic ads tend to be very visual. And so whenever you're doing programmatic ads, usually I would say that's a good channel to use. I would prefer doing that for things like specific imagery or doing videos. You can also do native ads, which you still have to have some sort of like visual element to it. And those are probably pretty similar to Google ads, but at the end of the day, usually there's a little bit more of a visual or oral if you're doing radio, I guess, bend with programmatic. Google, you can definitely see a lot more success with your keywords and everything, because for Google, it's a search engine, right? People are actually typing in something that they want to find. So they have a little bit, when we're talking about the marketing funnel and like awareness, and like how aware and how close they are to converting. For people in the Google sphere, I would probably use Google if you're trying to target a certain amount of people that know about your industry in general, enough to have a little bit more of a specific search to where then you can still fill that need. Whereas programmatic, I would say programmatic's really good to get intentional awareness out for people that wouldn't otherwise know about your brand. For nonprofits, it's really good for event promotion as well. Things like if you want to do certain conversions, if you're wanting to, get people to buy certain amounts of event tickets, let's say, if you've got like a gala coming up, you could always use programmatic to point people towards that. You could do it for public service announcements, which is kind of similar to like brand awareness, but I would probably use programmatic for more broad scale, like awareness type of campaigns, and then Google for more of those middle to almost about to convert audiences.
Right. And so I heard you once say that Google ads were for people, which by the way, most of them are text ads, but Google ads were for people who wanted to buy something now.
Yes.
Right. Because they're searching for that keyword or that phrase. And right. Programmatic was for products or services for people that will eventually buy into them. And I thought that was interesting because that has a effect on the amount of times people click on those ads, right? Yeah. And what's the industry average? What's the industry click-through rate of an ad programmatic?
Yeah, so they vary based on the actual or where they're placed. So like a connected TV, your CTRs, for example, are going to be a lot lower for a connected TV campaign because no one can them because you're watching them, so people can't really click them to begin with on most platforms. And then for things like
good point.
Like a display ad campaign, which those are the ones where like if we're on weather.com and we got a bunch of banners, those usually get a higher CTR. And usually I want to say the average is around 0.12% is your national average where you at least want to stay and start. I think it's okay to go like 0.09% to 0.12%, but definitely 0.12% is where the average is. And
okay, so let's take the high end of that, 0.12.
Yeah.
And Google we all know Google because Google's been around for a long time. Google's, most marketers will try to start with 3% conversion and go up from there. And so it's not uncommon to see somewhere like between 5 and 7, but anything over 3 or north of 3 is considered successful. So that 3% compared to say a 0.12 is a big difference, right? And that's where that effect is, where people are eventually going to buy, or we're enticing them to want to buy, as opposed to somebody who's already decided they wanted to buy or donate or whatever the action is on Google, and they're looking for somewhere to do it right now.
Sure. Too, when you think about because of the nature of both, 0.12% of 6 million people that you're targeting, that's still a good number. And sometimes with Google ads, since you're targeting somewhat of a narrower group of people, 3%, it's still good, but we have to think about that differential as well, because there's a lot of people, again, programmatic, if you're not doing at least 1 million or 2 million people and you're targeting, that's low. And so 0.12% as a national average, that's still a lot of people that are interacting with your ads and taking note of that. And it obviously depends on how you're
aggressive you are with the.
Yeah. If we're doing a national campaign versus a local one, that's obviously going to be a little bit different. But yeah, also that variable that also kind of helps depend. It's not just the, 3% versus 0.12%. There's a lot more going behind that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And only because I work with you, Ashley, I could ask you this. Have you ever exceeded the national average of 1.2%?
Yes. Usually I double it.
Yeah.
I don't
darn right, girl.
Yeah. No. Yes. No, I don't think I've ever gone below 0.2%.
Mm-hmm.
So that just shows you what PGM can do for you. But
well, thanks to you and learning that platform and becoming quite the expert on that. And I just these demand side platforms, they call them DSPs for short, right? They're basically software as a service. So it's an application you load up on your browser, pretty much, right?
Right.
And there's a lot of players out there. You mentioned the one that we like. We've been through several of them, I know, and settled on StackAdapt, who we love, and we love the people over there.
Yeah.
So quick shout out to them.
Yeah, and there's some other ones too. Choosel we've used before in the past.
Yep.
Simplify, despite its name, actually has a lot of control for the user to be able to kind of go in and build and look at data before a campaign even starts.
Nice.
One of the reasons why we really like StackAdapt is because they have a forecasting tool, which is really nice. Because obviously, whenever we get clients who are looking at different ways to promote their organization or like an event or something, and we throw programmatic as an idea, again, $2,000, like what is that going to get me? That's a good question to be asking. And the nice thing with StackAdapt is that it's always estimated numbers, right? It's never exact numbers, but they at least give us some sort of processor that we can use based on the data they've seen in other campaigns, based on, the targeting parameters that we put in. We can get a good estimate of how that campaign is going to perform before we put any money down. And obviously, for clients, they love to hear that, but also for agencies too. It's good because then you can kind of continue that conversation and not just say, oh, well, we don't know until we run the campaign. It's like, who wants to spend $2,000 and not know exactly, or even just a basis of what they're going to get with that? Because they deserve to know, and StackAdapt allows that transparency so you can give them a good idea and say, and then also upsell in a sense, like, hey, this is where we're getting with, 2,000, but we're looking at the numbers. If you're willing to bump it to maybe 2,500 or 3,000, then we could get a lot more of these impressions that you said you're interested in, or we can get to that CTR rate that we know you're looking for. And so it's also good on the agency side to be able to use it as a technique.
Well, I don't know if people understand the gravity of what you just said, because you're giving clients numbers that they weren't able to get just 5 years ago or 10 years ago. To be able to say, if you spend X dollars, you're going to get this number of impressions. We estimate, and we always try to beat our estimations, right? As you just mentioned. And then of those, we know exactly how many clicks we're going to get. So we know how many people are going to visit your website or your landing page or wherever we're sending them to. And then from there, we can look at conversions, right? Like what actions are they taking? And then we can use Google Analytics to measure those goals, I guess they call them. So we weren't able to do a lot of that before. And it's because of this digital realm that we're now in, to be able to say exactly, this is exactly what's going to happen. This is our estimate, and we're going to crush it.
Yeah.
And how cool is that?
It's cool for the clients for sure. And it probably gives it peace because they know a general sense of what they just signed on for. But I think it's also really nice for people managing the campaign, like an agency or someone who's in that specific role. Because if anything, they have a basis of what to kind of expect, which is really nice because sometimes that helps influence your optimization. So if you go 2 weeks in and you're nowhere near where you thought you would be at 2 weeks for that type of campaign, maybe, you can go back and it kind of gives you an idea, okay, like what do I need to look for? And it's nice to give yourself like a basis of what to expect, because the hard thing with programmatic is that we can guarantee attention and website traffic. But at the end of the day, it's up to the landing page and the function of the website to really make the sell. So we'll give you the eyeballs, but I think sometimes that's the differentiator. And so sometimes you can, well, not sometimes, always, you can actually get that data from StackAdapt, and based on certain metrics, either performing high or low, you can kind of determine where exactly the issue is. Maybe we've got a lot of impressions, but not many clicks. Maybe we change something with the ad, or we change some of the copy. We do some A/B testing. Maybe we're getting a lot of clicks and a lot of impressions and a really good CTR, but there's no conversions. Like, what's going on? Maybe it's something with the landing page, and maybe we have to make it a little bit more user-friendly or point people towards the next step a little bit more clearly. So there's a lot that you can see with how your campaign is going that you'd never be able to see in like a billboard campaign.
We call them opportunities. Right?
Yes, yeah.
All of a sudden, we're not doing it as well as we thought. There's an opportunity there. You know, we can make some optimizations to make sure we darn well do get the numbers that were estimated, or in your case, double them or whatever, triple them.
You can see like what's going on in real time. Again, like billboards, awesome. At some point, how do you track, like, was it the ad that wasn't working? Was it just not interesting for the people in that area? Like, what's going on? You can't find out. But programmatic, you can find out every step of the way where people are at. And it helps you understand how to better advertise what you're doing.
Right. I also like the idea of the giving the estimated impressions and click-through rates. You could actually have that conversation before they decide to go through with it. In fact, that becomes a conversation as to whether they think it's worth it or not. Right.
Yeah.
So that's one of my favorite parts. It's like, we could tell you the numbers, and then you can decide if you want to spend 2,000 or 1,000 or 3,000 on a campaign for X number of clicks to your website. And that's a decision you can make before you even decide to spend money. I like your analogy with the billboard though, because we could get numbers like how many cars will be passing by every week, right?
Yeah.
And I think they give those numbers by the week, because weekends are different. But how many of those people are looking up? One, right? How many people are able to read the whole thing? And now with a lot of digital billboards, right? They switch sometimes to your what was the website or what was the phone number?
Right. It's like missed it. Oops.
You missed it. Yeah. I mean, if it's on your commute, there's always tomorrow, I guess. But that's about it, right? There's no real knowledge in real time of what the conversion is, unless they do call or they do go to the website and there's some capture mechanism that says, how did you find out about us?
Yeah. It's
or
like,
it was a special URL.
It's basically like 0 to 100. It's like, you only know if the billboard worked if you see people through the door, which obviously that's how any ad is supposed to be, right? But at least with programmatic, you can kind of track and see where you could do better to get more people in the door. So all those people you might have lost that you wouldn't have otherwise known the reason why for a billboard, you can at least see the data, and it can tell you, hey, maybe we should try this instead. And you basically get like another opportunity to target people and make your strategy better. And that's just one of the beautiful things about digital marketing in general, is that usually you have that opportunity to be able to understand the people you're trying to get more. And it's nice. I would hope for our clients, even if they don't decide to go forward with programmatic, at least they had a trustworthy conversation with an agency that gave you as much information up front, and you decide, like, what do you think is valuable, like in terms of these numbers? And I would hope, I know if it were me, I would appreciate, before we slam $2,000 down for a campaign, that I'm getting honest numbers. And I have a good sense of what that's going to be.
Yeah. And it almost sounds like, too, the real work begins about 1 to 2 weeks after the campaign starts, right? Because that's when all the optimization happens. And in my mental picture, I'm thinking, you're twisting dials and raising levers. And I'm sure, it's a little more complicated than that.
Once the campaign starts, I don't touch anything. I just let the data trickle in, give it about a week or two, just to get a really good sense of like, is this working? And then after 2 weeks, then go in, see what's going on. That just basically gives people time to see your ads, gives them time to interact with it, and it gives the platform time to give a really good idea of
what's going on.
Yeah. Are we good, or we need to change something?
Well, plus it also requires you to set it up correctly. And maybe correctly is not the right word, but set it up for its best optimization right out of the gate. Let it go and simmer. And there's that simmer period, and then go in and optimize after that. Because there's always improvements to be made, right?
Yeah, that's true. You don't want to just like press go and make all your optimizations later. Try and make it the best you can before you start it. And then let it simmer because honestly, like a couple days in, it launches. I obviously look at it. I want to make sure it's like running right. But in terms of like twisting this dial or touching this go button, usually just let it do its thing. And unless there's like a technical error and they're not going out,
sure.
You just let the data come in, and then that way you can make the best decision about what dial to turn, because you don't want to like turn something off that will actually help it in a week or two. It's just not showing it yet.
Good point. So there's like, what about a 10 to 14 day waiting period that you typically do for a month-long campaign?
Definitely for a month. Honestly, for any campaign, if we're doing a really short campaign where I think we've had somebody do like a 3-week campaign, we were able to crank one out in a really short time frame and get them 3 weeks before their event. Then I would probably go in like within 1 week, but that's just because our window of opportunity is so much lower than that. After a week, we only have like 2 weeks left. So we'll go in and make slight adjustments. But honestly, for a 3-week campaign, I probably wouldn't be making too many adjustments anyway, because it's only going to be 3 weeks. So you'll do like more of the minimal things and then
Well, I'm not overwhelmed at all.
Sorry, guys.
I think you've given our listeners a really good breakdown. So thank you for that, of programmatic and what it means and, how it could help their business versus, say, a Google ad, which everybody's pretty familiar with. So thank you for that. And thank you for breaking that down for us. I'll ask you just a personal question. Who's your mentor these days?
I have like someone I admire most.
Yeah.
And it's probably my mom and my sister. I know it could be, I know it's cliche, but it's true, honestly, like just from some of their own past life struggles and seeing how they've come out of that, and, them just being very kind, but still strong women. It's just a great example to be able to look up to. My sister's older than me. And so her and my mom, they have a lot of similar qualities, and then they are still very different. So it's cool to be able to look up to both of them in the same ways and in different ones. So probably them.
Very nice. Very nice. One last question. Tell us something about you that maybe nobody knows about or not too many people know about.
Pretty much an open book. It's kind of hard. I don't need to work on it. But I'd say professionally, a lot of like colleagues, people I work with, probably don't know that I'm actually very much a fan of music. When I was in school, I went to Illinois State University for my bachelor's degree. And while I was there, I got a vocal music minor, was in their top choir. I was a section leader for my senior year for our soprano section. I was involved in the a cappella program. I've been arranging music for a cappella groups actually since high school.
Wow.
I still do that now. And it's a lot of fun. And that's kind of where I find my like after work joy and everything. And it's a really good hobby that I enjoy.
And you're still arranging now.
Yeah. So I'm actually helping out with the a cappella programs at one of the high schools in the Chicagoland area. And so I will arrange for those kids. I get to go in every once in a while for the rehearsals and just kind of work with them to improve their musicality, teach music theory, go through the repertoire that they have. And it's really fun. And that's a newer thing I've been able to do. So,
Well, great. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, no problem.
Awesome. Well, that'll wrap it up for today's episode. Thank you, Ashley, for imparting your experience and your wisdom around programmatic. Really appreciate it. Till next time.
All righty. Bye. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Mission Matters podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.